So, I want you to imagine spending a passage of eras, decades even, just relentlessly climbing to the absolute top of your industry.
Right, doing whatever it takes.
Exactly. You put in the grueling hours, you sacrifice your personal life, you totally outmaneuver the competition, and finally you reach the summit.
The promised land, supposedly.
Yeah, exactly. You get the corner office, the impressive title on the door, and that massive bank account balance that you always thought would solve literally every problem in your life.
You have a vast constellation of resources right at your fingertips.
Right. So you close that heavy mahogany door, you sit back in your new leather chair, and you just wait for that overwhelming wave of peace and happiness to finally wash over you.
But, let me guess, it doesn't arrive.
It doesn't come at all.
Mm.
Instead, on day one of having everything you ever wanted, you just feel this tight, hollow anxiety sitting right in the center of your chest.
Yeah, it's a terrifying feeling.
It really is.
Yeah.
You look around at the rewards you possess, but internally, it feels like you're wearing a suit of armor that was tailored for someone else entirely. It's heavy, it's restrictive, and, well, it just doesn't fit.
It is a profoundly disorienting experience, and honestly, it happens to the overwhelming majority of individuals who reach the absolute pinnacle of their fields.
Wait, really? The overwhelming majority?
Oh, absolutely. They have all the external markers of victory, but internally, biologically, their nervous system is responding to this massive success as if it were a life-threatening emergency.
Which is just wild to think about. And that is exactly what our exploration is about today. Because if the conventional blueprint for success basically ends with a hollow panic attack in a corner office...
Then the blueprint itself is fundamentally flawed.
Exactly. So today, we're unpacking a fascinating framework that explains why the human nervous system literally treats high-level success like an invasive virus.
And more importantly, how we can completely rewire our biological hardware to not just achieve our goals, but, actually tolerate the joy of them.
I love that word, tolerate. We think we naturally know how to experience joy and abundance, right? Like, oh, just give me the money, I'll be fine.
But biologically, our bodies are often completely unprepared for it. We're dealing with this phenomenon of a mismatched identity. A person physically inhabits the grand estate or the executive suite, but their internal emotional frequency, their physiological baseline feels completely undeserving or even terrified of it.
And then, then comes the secondary emotion, which honestly might be worse than the anxiety itself, which is this immense guilt.
The guilt is agonizing.
Right. Because they look at their life, they see this endless tide of material wealth they've accumulated, and they tell themselves, I possess all of this. A vast multitude of people would do anything to be in my position. I should be ecstatic.
But they aren't. And that...
It made me think of an analogy. It's like trying to install a brilliant, futuristic software program, this beautiful new life of abundance and peace, onto an ancient, archaic operating system.
Oh, that's a perfect way to look at it.
Right. The old operating system just doesn't understand the new code. It looks at this beautiful new software and perceives it as a malicious virus.
So what does it do? The hardware simply rejects it. The cooling fans spin completely out of control. The system overheats and it just crashes.
Exactly. In this scenario, the human body is the hardware, and it is actively crashing because it literally cannot compute the success.
That is precisely the mechanism at work. The system crashes because the foundational code is biologically incompatible with the new environment. I mean, think about it. The archaic operating system was programmed for sheer survival.
Like scanning for threats constantly.
Well, yes, scanning for threats, hoarding limited resources, basically assuming the environment is inherently hostile. So when you suddenly introduce a reality of safety and abundance, the survival brain just panics.
Because it doesn't know what to do without a fight.
Exactly. It doesn't know how to navigate an environment where there is nothing to fight or flee from. It feels incredibly vulnerable. So to understand how to actually upgrade that system so it accepts the new software, we have to start by fundamentally redefining what we are actually trying to achieve.
We have to completely dismantle our societal definition of wealth.
We do. We have to tear it down to the studs.
Let's start dismantling then. Because if you walk up to anyone on the street, wealth is a purely mathematical concept to them. It means accumulation.
Having a mountain of gold.
Right. A massive portfolio, a surplus so huge you could never possibly spend it in a single lifetime.
And that definition is the great illusion that traps so many highly driven individuals. There is this profound difference between conventional financial wealth and a state of true richness.
Okay, unpack that difference for us.
Well, classic philosophies of success, the ones that have really echoed through the ages, often talk about doing things in a certain way. But historically, the masses have profoundly misunderstood that specific phrase.
They interpret certain as meaning a particular rigid set of mechanical actions, don't they?
Exactly. Like, wake up before the dawn of the cycle, grind relentlessly for an ungodly amount of hours, send a vast multitude of emails, just follow these precise physical steps like it's a baking recipe.
Yeah, it's the ultimate hustle culture playbook. The idea that if you just mash the buttons in the right sequence, the universe will act like an ATM and spit out the rewards.
But in reality, doing things in a certain way actually means doing things in a knowing way.
In knowing way, okay.
It means moving through the world with absolute internal certainty. It is a frequency of total assurance, an unwavering internal state that remains completely undisturbed by whatever external fluctuations are happening around you.
Okay, let's look at this pragmatically for a second. If richness is an internal state of certainty rather than just a pile of physical assets, that completely changes the very definition of abundance.
It changes everything.
Because society defines abundance as having a vast surplus. It means having more than enough, like having a fleet of vehicles when you can only drive one at a time.
Which inherently breeds an endless cycle of anxiety.
Why? Because you have to protect it.
Exactly. A surplus is something that must be maintained, protected, insured, and fiercely defended against competitors.
Right. But this framework points to a radically different, far more peaceful definition. Abundance isn't a mountain of excess. Abundance is simply having exactly what you need in the exact moment you need it.
Nothing more, nothing less.
Just a perfect, seamless provision for the present moment. It's the elimination of friction, not just the accumulation of mass.
If you adopt society's definition, that vast surplus, you are stepping onto a treadmill of endless comparison and perpetual fear. This brings up an important point about the reality of human behavior.
What's that?
There are those possessing an endless tide of material wealth, individuals who have accumulated resources that could sustain their lineage for eras, who still live in sheer, agonizing terror of losing it all.
Oh, absolutely.
If someone possesses a massive global enterprise, they look at a competitor with an even larger market share, and they feel this profound, hollow sense of lack.
So they are mathematically wealthy, but they are absolutely impoverished in their emotional reality.
Yes, they literally live in a physiological state of poverty.
Because their nervous system is still running that I don't have enough background program, totally regardless of what the bank statement says.
Right.
So richness is essentially an emotional frequency. It's a physiological feeling of being calm, satisfied, and secure. And if you acquire the physical resources without first acquiring that emotional frequency, the resources are practically useless.
They actually become a burden rather than a liberation, because now you just have more things to worry about losing.
You're just a frightened person sitting inside a much more expensive fortress.
That's exactly what it is.
Let me throw an example out there, but I'm going to challenge it right after.
For it.
Imagine sitting on a quiet balcony and watching a magnificent fiery sunset paint the sky over a sprawling metropolis. Now, purely practically speaking, that experience yields zero physical currency.
No one is handing you a paycheck for watching the sun go down.
Exactly. Yet, in that exact moment, watching those colors, breathing the cool evening air, you can generate a massive, overwhelming surge of the richness frequency.
You feel entirely whole.
Right. You feel like you have absolutely everything. And the theory suggests that because reality responds to our internal state, generating this feeling is the actual mechanism that attracts material resources.
Yes. The universe, or, the complex web of human interactions and opportunities that make up our reality, does not speak our spoken languages. It doesn't comprehend our English words.
It comprehends our resonance.
Exactly. It reads the physiological output of our emotional state.
Okay, I hear you, but I have to aggressively push back here for a moment, because this is exactly where people roll their eyes and just tune out.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
If I am a listener, and I am struggling just to meet the absolute basic, brutal demands of my daily existence, say, I just got a surprise demand for resources that I absolutely cannot fulfill or my entire industry is collapsing, isn't it completely delusional and frankly a little toxic to sit around feeling abundant about a sunset?
It sounds reckless.
Yeah. How does feeling calm pay an unexpected demand for resources? The world demands action, not just a pleasant emotional vibration. It sounds like magic, not mechanics.
That is the ultimate friction point, and it is a completely valid criticism. It feels counterintuitive, even irresponsible, to be calm when your environment seems to demand absolute panic.
Right.
But to answer your question, we have to move away from the purely philosophical, mystical terminology of vibrations and look at the actual measurable biological machinery that transmits these states into reality.
The actual biology of it.
Yes, we have to look at the autonomic nervous system and the prefrontal cortex. It isn't magic, it is cognitive bandwidth.
Let's unpack the cognitive bandwidth then, because I think people assume mindset is just, thinking happy thoughts. But we are talking about actual biology here.
We are. The mind alone cannot force reality to bend if the biology is in total rebellion. When we speak of resonance, we are talking about a measurable physiological state.
Right.
The absolute crux of the matter is that the physical body must be in a state of physiological safety to even perceive an opportunity, let alone execute on one.
Explain the mechanism of that. Why does panic literally blind us?
The human nervous system operates in distinct overriding states. When you receive that surprise demand for resources, your body perceives a direct threat to its survival.
It's an emergency.
Exactly. It immediately drops into a sympathetic state. The amygdala sounds the alarm, and your adrenal glands flood your bloodstream with stress hormones. You are bracing for a fight, ready to flee, or frozen in primal fear.
You are biologically preparing for a physical predator to jump out of the brush.
But the predator is just an envelope in the mail. The body cannot differentiate between a physical tiger and a financial crisis. It uses the exact same biological hardware to respond to both.
Wow.
And here is where it affects reality creation. When you are in a sympathetic survival state, the blood flow in your brain literally shifts.
It moves.
Yes, it moves away from the prefrontal cortex, which is the area responsible for complex problem-solving, creativity, long-term planning, and recognizing nuanced patterns. And it moves toward the hindbrain, the primitive areas responsible for immediate, blunt force survival.
You literally lose your ability to think creatively.
You get profound cognitive tunnel vision. You become obsessively fixated on the threat. And because of this biological tunnel vision, you become completely blind to the peripheral opportunities that exist in your environment.
So the solution could be right in front of you.
The solution to your problem might be sitting right next to you. A new connection, a creative pivot, a hidden resource. But because your prefrontal cortex is offline, you literally cannot see it.
Okay, this is a massive paradigm shift. When people say you attract what you feel, it's not that the universe is magically mailing you a reward because you smiled at a sunset.
No, not at all.
It's that when you use the sunset to calm your nervous system, you downregulate those stress hormones, you pull your body out of the sympathetic fight or flight state, and you bring your prefrontal cortex back online.
You restore your cognitive bandwidth.
And suddenly, you can actually see the opportunities that the panic brain was literally blind to.
Precisely. You become cognitively capable of navigating complex reality again. True reality creation requires shifting the biological vehicle into a parasympathetic state, the rest and digest state.
Where you feel safe.
Exactly. It's a state where the physical body is calm, the heart rhythm is balanced, and the brain is highly receptive. You cannot attract or construct a reality of ease while your biology is braced for impact. If the body is closed off to protect itself, it deflects everything, even the very resources trying to reach it.
I want to make sure we really highlight this because it ruins so much of the standard self-help advice out there.
Oh, it completely upends it.
If I stand in front of a mirror every single morning and I forcefully repeat, I am a magnet for boundless prosperity. I am experiencing a magnificent life, but my shoulders are up to my ears, my jaw is violently clenched, and my stomach is tied in knots. The affirmations are useless, aren't they?
They are worse than useless. They're creating internal cognitive dissonance. The universe, meaning your own subconscious and the external reality you interact with, hears the physiological terror infinitely louder than the verbal affirmations.
Because your physical reactions reveal your absolute true programming.
Yes. The knotted stomach is the absolute truth of your current belief system.
Wow, the knotted stomach is the truth.
Completely. Regardless of the affirmations you chanted that morning, your body still fiercely believes in lack. It still believes it is in mortal danger. If a sudden obstacle arrives and your breath becomes shallow and your chest tightens, your body is telling you exactly what operating system is currently running.
So we have to train the body for safety before we can train the mind for success. We have to signal to the hardware that the environment is actually secure.
That's the first step.
How do we practically do that, though, in the middle of a totally chaotic day?
We utilize actionable biological protocols to explicitly signal safety to the primal brain. One highly effective method is utilizing the slow, steady rhythm of breath.
Breathing.
Yes. Breath is the bridge between the conscious mind and the autonomic nervous system. It is one of the only autonomic functions we can consciously override.
Right, like I can't consciously tell my liver to secrete enzymes, but I can decide to take a deep breath right now.
Exactly. By using a slow, steady rhythm inhaling and exhaling in a perfectly balanced equilibrium, we bypass the anxious, looping thoughts and speak directly to the nervous system's hardware.
Like a structured breathing pattern.
Yes, you might use a rhythmic pattern where you inhale, hold, exhale, and hold in a perfectly symmetrical rhythm. Just a steady, deliberate count for each phase.
How does that actually convince the brain that we are safe? I mean, structurally, what is happening?
It reverse engineers the physiological response. You see, the brain constantly monitors the body to determine the state of the environment. If your breathing is fast and shallow, the brain assumes there is a threat.
It thinks, oh, we must be running from something.
Exactly. But if you force your breathing into a perfectly slow, balanced equilibrium, the primal brain receives a very clear signal. We must be safe. We would not be breathing this slowly and deliberately if a predator were truly chasing us.
That is fascinating.
It then halts the production of stress hormones and activates the parasympathetic nervous system.
I love this framing. Let's adapt an analogy to visualize this because I think it helps ground it.
Sure.
Imagine you are trying to capture a very delicate, incredibly rare butterfly. The butterfly represents the solution to your problem, or that huge opportunity, or a creative breakthrough.
Got
If you are terrified that you won't catch it, your nervous system is in a sympathetic state. You are running around the garden screaming, sweating, and aggressively waving this giant clumsy net. You are tearing up the flowers, knocking over the statues.
It's pure chaos.
What is the butterfly going to do?
It is going to flee. The frantic energy repels the very thing you desire.
Exactly. The butterfly will stay far, far away from that chaos. You cannot catch it through sheer panic force. Instead, you have to literally become the quiet, perfectly still garden where the butterfly naturally wants to land.
You cultivate the environment.
Right. You use the breath to stop running, lower the net, and cultivate an ecosystem of absolute calm. You create the environment, and the butterfly simply arrives of its own accord.
That is a perfect visualization of the biological mechanism. The frantic waving of the net is the sympathetic nervous state, the tunnel vision, the stress hormones, the forceful, exhausting hustle.
And the still garden is the parasympathetic state.
Yes. The open prefrontal cortex, the biological safety, the effortless reception of opportunity.
But this raises a massive question for me. If the parasympathetic state is so much more effective, and honestly, so much more pleasant to experience, why is the body so incredibly quick to panic in the first place?
That's the core issue.
Why is our default setting so often a state of defensive terror? Why do we immediately grab the net and start screaming at the first sign of trouble?
That brings us to the invisible scripts that command these biological reactions. We have to look at the very architecture of our belief systems. We have to understand where the code of that archaic operating system actually came from.
Okay, let's unpack these invisible scripts, because we aren't born stressed out about market share and resource scarcity, right?
Not at all. We arrive in this world as pure, infinite consciousness. A newly arrived infant possesses zero pre-installed limitations.
They don't know what scarcity is.
They do not comprehend scarcity, they do not suffer from imposter syndrome, and they certainly do not believe they are unworthy of love, success, or nourishment. When an infant is hungry, it cries with the absolute, unquestioned expectation that the universe will provide.
So every limitation is learned.
Every single limitation, every localized fear, and every artificial boundary we currently hold as an adult is a learned story.
We absorb it from our surroundings.
We absorb it completely and uncritically. From the moment we are born, we act as massive biological sponges, soaking up the ambient anxiety of our early environments.
Like the hushed arguments at the dinner table.
Exactly. We internalize the tension our caretakers had about resources. We absorb the restrictive narratives of our educational and societal structures. We take in the subtle, pervasive cues from our culture that dictate what is possible for someone of our background or our physical form.
It's like downloading a massive bundle of background software before you even realize you own a computer. You are just passively receiving all these restrictive updates.
That's exactly how it happens.
And suddenly, a passage of eras later, that software is running everything in the background, making your decisions for you.
And what we must deeply realize is that a belief system is not just a passive, inert file sitting quietly on a hard drive. Once a belief system is installed, it acts as a living, breathing, biological entity.
Like an organism.
Yes. And like any living entity in the natural world, its absolute primary directive is its own survival.
No system wants to be uninstalled. It will fight to stay alive.
Exactly. No system willingly walks toward its own execution. Therefore, your current belief system, even if it is causing you immense suffering, even if it is keeping you impoverished, anxious, or lonely, will actively and aggressively try to convince you that changing it is dangerous, exhausting, or completely impossible.
Because the known misery feels safer to the primal brain than the unknown abundance.
The brain prefers a predictable nightmare over an unpredictable dream.
But how does a belief actually defend itself? If I consciously decide I want to be wealthy and peaceful, how does a subconscious belief stop me? How does it physically manifest resistance?
It uses biology. Specifically, it uses a biological filtering mechanism in the brain known as the reticular activating system, or the RAS.
The RAS. Okay, this is where it gets genuinely mind-bending.
It truly is the mechanism that constructs our physical reality. You see, at any given moment, there is a staggering magnitude of sensory data bombarding your brain. A vast tidal wave of information is hitting your eyes, your ears, your skin every single second.
Just a completely overwhelming amount of data.
Exactly. The disparity is vast between what exists and what we can process. You cannot possibly process all of it consciously. Your brain would instantly overload and shut down.
So it filters it.
Yes. So the reticular activating system acts as a highly specialized filter, a gatekeeper at the door of your consciousness. Its job is to sift through that massive tidal wave of data and only let in a solitary drop of information that aligns with what you have already deemed important.
And would deem something important your foundational belief system.
Exactly. Your beliefs set the parameters for the filter.
Let's use an analogy that everyone listening will immediately understand. The RAS is essentially the algorithm on your smartphone's social media feed.
Oh, that is a brilliant comparison. Expand on that.
Think about how the algorithm works. If you accidentally linger on one video of a terrible car crash, the algorithm registers that engagement.
It notices your attention.
Right. It says, this user's interested in car crashes. This is what they expect to see. So the next time you open the app, your entire feed is nothing but car crashes, disasters, and anxiety-inducing footage.
It feeds you what it thinks you want.
Exactly. The app is actively filtering out a vast constellation of joyful, funny, or educational videos to serve you a concentrated dose of chaos, simply because it thinks that is what your reality consists of. The RAS is doing the exact same thing to your physical waking reality.
That is precisely how it operates. If your underlying downloaded belief system is, the world is fundamentally hostile, resources are scarce, and I'm fundamentally unequipped to handle it, your RAS acts just like that algorithm.
It filters for the crashes.
Yes, it is going to aggressively filter out every single piece of evidence that contradicts that negative belief. It will filter out the subtle opportunity, the unexpected compliment, the open door. It will literally render you blind to them.
Wow.
And simultaneously, it will aggressively filter in every minor rejection, every obstacle, and every difficulty, highlighting them in neon, just to prove to you that your miserable limitation is true.
So if I genuinely believe people are untrustworthy, my RAS will completely ignore the vast multitude of people who helped me today, and it will hyperfixate on the one solitary person who cut me off in traffic. It serves me the car crash video of reality.
The system demands to be proven right. The cycle of limitation forms an unbroken loop. Let's trace it out.
Okay, let's trace it.
The foundational beliefs dictate what the RAS filters in. That filtered information generates your conscious thoughts. Your thoughts generate your physiological and emotional reactions, like the stress hormone spike and the knotted stomach.
Which then drive my actions.
Exactly. Those biological reactions drive your physical actions or inactions, and those actions produce the results in your external reality. And naturally, those results perfectly reinforce the original limiting belief.
The loop closes, tightening its grip on your identity.
It is a biological self-fulfilling prophecy. We are literally trapped in an echo chamber of our own nervous system.
So, if our brains are essentially just massive, highly efficient, prove-me-right machines, how do we hack the machine? If the algorithm is feeding me car crashes, how do I reset the algorithm so it starts eagerly proving a positive story instead of a deeply negative one?
The only way to break the loop is to recognize the belief for what it truly is, a mere fictional story. It is not an absolute law of physics. It is a narrative you inherited.
So you have to stop believing the story.
You must firmly close the book on that story and make a conscious, sovereign decision to write a new one. But to do that, to actually step outside the loop and reprogram the RAS, requires a profound elevation in how we view our own existence. We have to move through the distinct evolutionary stages of human consciousness.
The stages of consciousness. Okay, this is where the material shifts from just talking about positive psychology into a complete fundamental evolution of identity.
Precisely. To rewrite the operating system, you must first accurately locate where you currently reside within the framework of consciousness. If you don't know where you are starting, you cannot chart a course.
Makes sense.
There are progressive stages of how a human being interacts with reality. The overwhelming majority of the population begins, and sadly often ends their entire lives, in the first stage. We can call it experiencing life as a victim of circumstance.
That's the life happens to me stage.
Yes. In this first stage, the subconscious programming runs on absolute autopilot. The individual feels completely at the mercy of external forces, the economy, their upbringing, their physical environment, the actions of leaders.
They're just a leaf blown about by a chaotic wind.
Exactly. There is no perceived agency. When something goes wrong, the immediate response is to look outward for someone or something to blame.
Which is an incredibly disempowering and terrifying place to live, because you have zero control over the wind. So when people finally get sick of being the leaf, when the pain of powerlessness becomes too great, they usually swing to the absolute opposite extreme, right? The second stage.
They do. They transition into experiencing life as a forceful creator. This is the life happens by me stage.
Yeah.
This is where the lion's share of highly driven, massively ambitious individuals reside.
The hustlers.
The entrepreneurs, the top-tier executives, the high achievers, they realize they have agency. They realize they are not a leaf. So they decide to grip the steering wheel of reality until their knuckles turn white.
They use immense grinding willpower to force outcomes. They manipulate their environment. They strategize constantly. They sacrifice sleep. They push through physical pain. It is the absolute embodiment of the hustle.
And it works. To a certain degree, that is the trap. This stage creates immense external success. They build the resources, they acquire the titles, they conquer their respective mountains.
But at a huge cost.
An immense cost. Because it requires such monumental, unyielding friction against the natural flow of life, it inevitably leads to profound exhaustion. It leads to physiological burnout, deteriorating health, and that hollow, mismatched identity we discussed at the very beginning of our exploration today.
They created the success, but the friction of forcing it broke them in the process.
Exactly.
I have an analogy for this evolution. It's like playing an incredibly complex, highly difficult video game. In that first stage, the to me stage, you genuinely think you are the tiny pixelated character on the screen.
You identify completely with the avatar in the game.
Right. You think the avatar's limitations are your limitations. You're just running around getting battered by obstacles, completely powerless, hoping the game doesn't arbitrarily crush you.
And then the second stage.
Then you wake up a bit and enter the second stage, the by me stage. You realize you can move the character, you have agency. So you start mashing the buttons furiously, sweating, eyes glued to the screen, fighting every single enemy, terrified that if you stop mashing the buttons for even a single second, you'll lose all your progress.
A brilliant analogy. The button mashing is the white-knuckle hustle. It's exhausting.
It's totally exhausting.
Oh, yeah.
Which brings us to the higher stages of consciousness, the transition from the exhausted button masher to something entirely different.
Yes. This is the realm where life flows through the individual and ultimately acts as the individual.
The through me and as me stages. Okay, this sounds very abstract. What does it actually mean in practice?
This is the realm of the superconscious. It is the profound recognition that the human body, this physical form we inhabit, is merely a biological avatar for a limitless, unified field of intelligence.
So you stop identifying as just the body.
You stop identifying as the localized, fragile human ego who has to fight the world for survival, and you recognize yourself as the infinite intelligence that animates the human.
Going back to the video game, it's the profound moment you pause, look down at your hands, and realize you aren't the pixelated character getting battered on the screen.
You are the player holding the controller.
Exactly. You are sitting safely in the living room. The digital enemies in the game cannot actually hurt you. And because you realize you are the player, you don't have to mash the buttons in a panic anymore. You can simply open the developer menu and reprogram the game's rules.
When an individual shifts into these higher stages of consciousness, a profound physiological and emotional unburdening occurs. They completely stop identifying with the limiting labels of their past.
They drop the old story.
Yes, they no longer say, I am a person who fundamentally struggles with retaining resources, or I am a person who is destined to work endlessly just to survive. They recognize they are the observer. They are the boundless awareness in which the human experience is unfolding. The need to force reality vanishes, replaced by a profound trust in the flow of life.
Which is incredibly liberating. It sounds like absolute peace. But let's bring it down to the ground level because, the air gets a little thin up there in the superconscious.
Let's ground it.
Once the listener understands this paradigm shift, once they realize they are the player holding the controller, looking at the underlying code of the game, how do they actually input the new cheat codes?
How do we do the granular, messy, daily work?
Yeah, exactly. How do we change the physical hardware and the mental software?
That is the essential transition. We must move from philosophical understanding into a highly specific practical protocol for biological and mental rewiring. Knowledge without biological application is merely entertainment.
So true.
To forge new identity and align success with true, unshakable happiness, there is a sustained protocol that must be practiced relentlessly. To truly rewrite the neural pathways, one should commit to this practice without a single day of deviation for a complete cycle of the moon.
A complete cycle of the moon. A sustained block of unbroken consistency. That is the magic ingredient. You can't just do this once and expect the archaic operating system to be gone.
No, it requires repetition to install the new code.
So what are the pillars of this daily protocol? Where do we start?
We begin at the gate. The first pillar is auditing the mental stream. It is the relentless, uncompromising vigilance of catching unhelpful thoughts as they arise and coldly, objectively discarding them before they trigger a biological response.
Okay, I have to be honest, this sounds exhausting. If I have a vast multitude of thoughts a day, you want me to play bouncer at the door of my own mind all day long?
It sounds like a lot.
During a busy workday, my conscious brain simply doesn't have the bandwidth to monitor every single thought.
It does require effort initially, but it is not about analyzing every thought deeply. It is about a swift, ruthless categorization. Every single thought that presents itself must be judged by a single binary metric.
What's the metric?
Does this thought benefit the reality I am actively choosing to construct? If the thought is, I will probably fail this endeavor just like last time, you must catch it. Recognize it as an obsolete echo of the old operating system and immediately discard it.
You don't engage with it.
Exactly. You do not argue with it, you do not unpack it, you do not feel guilty for having it, you simply refuse to grant it residency in your consciousness.
It's like tending a garden. If you see a weed, you don't get angry at the weed. You don't ask the weed about its childhood. You just pluck it out and toss it over the fence because it doesn't belong in the garden you were growing.
That is a perfect analogy.
But still, the fatigue of doing that all day is real. Is there a way to bypass this active conscious filtering? Can we hack the system when the bouncer's off duty?
Yes. And that is exactly where the second pillar comes in, which solves the problem of conscious exhaustion. We can call it the alpha state hack.
The alpha state hack.
It involves capitalizing on the natural biological rhythms of the human brain. The brain is not uniformly active throughout the day. It cycles through different brainwave states. The conscious, critical, analytical mind, the bouncer, operates in the beta brainwave state. This is highly active, alert, and defensive.
That's where we are during the workday, sending emails and solving crises.
Correct. But the human brain is at its absolute most malleable, its most programmable in the twilight moments of consciousness. The gentle, hazy descent into sleep at night, and the slow, groggy ascent into waking in the morning.
Ah, the edges of sleep.
During these specific windows, the brain transitions out of beta and drops into the alpha and theta wave states.
So the bouncer at the door is basically asleep at his post. The firewall is down.
Exactly. The critical faculty is lowered, meaning the subconscious mind is wide open, highly suggestible, and ready to receive new code without arguing. This is the ultimate window to implant new visualizations and emotional frequencies.
So instead of doing what most of us do, which is lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, and replaying every embarrassing thing we did that day, or stressing about tomorrow's inbox, we use that window strategically.
You must fiercely protect that window. Instead of falling asleep reviewing the anxieties of the day, you must fall asleep actively visualizing the emotional frequency of your desired reality.
Generating the feeling.
Yes, You generate the feeling of peace, the feeling of the knowing way, and you implant the feeling of the new identity right into the open subconscious as you drift off. It literally rewires the neural pathways while you sleep.
That makes profound sense. You're slipping the new software past the firewall. But what about when we're awake? We mentioned earlier that robotic affirmations, just staring in the mirror and declaring I am experiencing boundless prosperity, often backfires because the conscious beta mind rejects them as a blatant lie.
It creates that cognitive dissonance,
So how do we program the mind when it's awake and critical?
which is why the third pillar is the profound psychological power of why. Instead of simply stating declarative affirmations that the conscious mind instantly labels as false, we utilize the brain's natural evolutionary mechanics.
Meaning what?
We frame the new reality as a question. The human brain abhors an open loop. It is fundamentally designed as a survival mechanism to solve puzzles and answer questions.
Oh, it's essentially a massive biological search engine. If you type a query into a search engine, it has to return results.
Precisely. So instead of declaring, I possess a vast constellation of resources, which your brain immediately laughs at because it knows your bank balance, you ask a question.
You ask, why am I so incredibly successful? Why does reality respond to me with such effortless abundance? Why am I so calm in the face of challenges?
Yes. By phrasing the desired reality as a query, you completely bypass the critical rejection. The conscious mind isn't being asked to believe a statement, it is being given a task.
It has to go look for the answer.
The subconscious mind is essentially forced to accept the premise of the question, and it immediately activates the reticular activating system. It begins to scour your reality, your memories, and your environment to find evidence to answer the question. It starts filtering in the positive data, thereby proving the new belief right.
That is absolutely brilliant. You are hacking the prove me right machine. You give it a positive mystery to solve, and it uses its own algorithm to serve you evidence of your success. You trick the bouncer into looking for the right kind of guests.
It is a complete judo move on your own psychology.
It is an incredibly elegant mechanism.
Which brings us to the fourth and final pillar. This is perhaps the most important because it anchors all of this mental and emotional work firmly into physical reality. The fourth pillar is embodied motion.
Embodied motion. Tell me about the science behind this, because it sounds like we are moving from thoughts back into the physical body.
We must. Mental exercises, visualizations, and questions are powerful, but they can remain abstract. To truly convince the animal body that a new reality has arrived, to truly shift the autonomic nervous system into that parasympathetic state of safety, you must adopt the true I am statements through physical movement.
You have to act it out.
You cannot just think like the new version of yourself. You must move like them.
There's a lot of research on this, right? Embodied cognition.
Yeah.
The idea that our posture doesn't just reflect our mood, it actually creates our mood.
Yes. There are numerous behavioral studies demonstrating that adopting expansive, open postures literally alters your biochemistry. It can lower stress hormones and elevate the biology associated with confidence and risk tolerance.
The mind looks to the body to understand how it should feel.
Exactly.
So how do we apply embodied motion in this protocol?
It involves physically acting out the new identity, going for a walk, actually stepping out into the world with the exact posture, the precise breathing rhythm, and the profound emotional resonance of the new identity.
So if the new identity is someone who is totally at peace, deeply secure, and profoundly impactful, you don't just sit on a cushion and imagine it. You go for a walk down the street and you physically embody that person.
You walk a walk.
You drop your shoulders, you elevate your gaze, you slow your breathing into that balanced equilibrium, and you walk as if that magnificent reality is already fully manifest. You walk like a person who has zero financial worries and zero self-doubt.
You bridge the gap between the intellectual concept of success and the biological acceptance of it. You are showing your nervous system what it physically feels like to inhabit that life. The body learns through motion, not just reflection.
I have to play the skeptic again, though, because this is the exact point where someone might throw their hands up. I can hear a listener thinking, okay, I understand the biochemistry, but walking around my neighborhood, breathing deeply, and pretending I possess an endless tide of wealth when I know I have a notice of eviction sitting on my kitchen counter, doesn't that risk crossing into mere delusion?
It's a fair question.
If I'm ignoring real-world problems to act like I'm rich, isn't that just toxic positivity?
That is a vital distinction to make, and it is a trap many fall into. This protocol is absolutely not about ignoring present reality. It is not about denying that challenges, demands, or crises exist. It is about refusing to let those present external realities dictate your internal emotional frequency.
Ah, let's dig into that distinction.
Delusion is believing a falsehood about the external world. Delusion is saying, I don't have an eviction notice, when you clearly do.
Right.
True reality creation, true mastery, is maintaining a sovereign internal state regardless of the external world. When you practice embodied motion, you are not pretending the current obstacles don't exist. You are generating the biological and cognitive capacity to transcend them.
Because if you let the eviction notice dictate your internal state, you drop into sympathetic panic, your prefrontal cortex shuts down, and you literally cannot figure out how to solve the eviction.
Exactly. By embodying the state of peace and capability, you keep your prefrontal cortex online. You are refusing to be a mere mirror that only reflects the current chaotic circumstances.
You become a projector.
Yes, you become a projector, casting a new frequency outward, allowing you to navigate the crisis with the intelligence and creativity of someone who is deeply secure.
That completely flips the script. You aren't ignoring the world. You are intentionally deciding what biological and cognitive energy you bring to the problem. The problem is real, but your panic is optional.
Perfectly stated.
Okay, let's pull all of this together. We've journeyed from the heavy, mismatched garments of unaligned success down into the biological engine of the heart and the nervous system. We look at how the RAS filters our reality to match our deeply held, often negative beliefs.
And we map the evolution through the stages of consciousness.
Right, moving from the exhausted button masher to the superconscious player holding the controller. And we have a practical daily protocol to forge the new identity. Auditing the thoughts, hacking the alpha state, utilizing the power of why, and physically embedding the change through embodied motion.
When we synthesize this entire journey, a much broader reflection on human potential emerges. We are forced to realize that we are not static, fragile beings, meant to be continually crushed by the immense pressures of the external world.
That fragility is the great illusion of the first stage of consciousness.
Exactly. We are pure, infinite consciousness that has simply adopted a temporary human avatar to experience and shape this reality.
In the discomfort you feel, that crushing imposter syndrome, the intense friction of the hustle, the bizarre anxiety when you achieve a milestone but feel hollow inside, it all exists for a singular, beautiful reason.
It means you are growing.
It exists solely because you have fundamentally outgrown the tiny, artificial boundaries that your early environment placed upon you. The pain is not a symptom of your inadequacy. It is a symptom of your profound expansion.
It is the friction of your evolution.
I want to move away from the cliches of butterflies and gardens for a second and look at it structurally. It's like a massive, beautiful skyscraper being built on the foundation of a tiny, single-story house. The foundation is cracking under the weight.
The structure can't hold it.
The cracking sounds terrifying, the building is swaying, but the cracks aren't proof that the building is bad. The cracks are the absolute proof that the old foundation is simply too small for the magnificent structure you are trying to become. You have to pour a new foundation.
A powerful structural analogy. The old foundation is the archaic operating system. The new skyscraper is the reality of your potential. If you are listening to this right now and you are feeling that pressure, that tightness in your chest, that profound mismatch between your external achievements and your internal truth, you must realize it isn't a sign that you are failing.
It is a signal.
It is the clearest possible biological signal that your old operating system is desperately, furiously trying to survive its own inevitable replacement.
And evolution is unstoppable once you become consciously aware of it. Which leaves us with one final lingering thought to ponder as we close today's exploration. We've established the mechanics. We know that your brain is ultimately just a brilliant biological machine designed to prove your deepest assumptions right.
And we know that your physical reality is essentially just a mirror reflecting those assumptions back to you.
The world is simply the echo of the biological frequency you transmit.
Exactly.
So my question to you, the listener, is this. If your reality is just a mirror waiting for instructions, what terrifyingly magnificent reality would emerge tomorrow if you simply decided right now to stop proving your limitations correct?